Before the war, when I was a young girl, and before any of this could have been imagined, my mother and I spent some time at my grandfather's place in the north. He owned a retreat in a valley near some mountains in upstate New York, and at the time it seemed like I'd never be able to explore all of the home and surrounding property. I remember standing in awe as my mother and I watched the sun rise and set each day from the front windows of the house, more amazed each day at the beauty of the sky as it shifted through its cycle of hues than I was the day before. I was just learning to write then and spell my full name, which was not a simple task for me, and I remember my early frustrations clearly. I remember sitting on books in a chair at grandfather's massive dinner table, which seemed to stretch on for miles, distracted by thoughts of how unimaginably tall the tree must have been that made the table, as my mother gently reminded me to stick with the task at hand, to apply the crayon to the paper, to stay in the lines, to put the letters that I'd only just learned in the proper order. "If you don't stay focused and dedicated, how will you ever finish?" she'd ask me, insisting that I wasn't putting enough effort into my spelling and reading lessons. For her, it seemed that time was always running out, and that I was never too young to be a hard worker. She'd ask me questions in her own distanced way, preoccupied by things I couldn't begin to understand at such a young age, but noticeably distracted nonetheless. And I'd wonder why she wanted me to learn to write while we were in such a grand place. There was so much to look at. There were so many things to see and take in. "If you don't take the time to do the important lessons now, you'll never have time for that sort of recreation," she'd say, noticing my dreaming stares out of the enormous picture windows, towards the fields and the pale horses that my grandfather must have owned. But I was still too young to have a real grasp of such concepts. The world was still a very large and mysterious place, and it seemed to me that my mother was only trying to hold me back. I know now, of course, that that wasn't the truth of things at all, but at the time it was so hard to stay focused. Hemingway is a hard name to spell, but I kept at it.